Justin Trudeau, once hailed as a fresh face of progressive politics, has seen his popularity wane significantly since taking office as Prime Minister of Canada in 2015. Trudeau's initial appeal stemmed from his charismatic leadership, promises of change, and a progressive agenda that resonated with a broad swath of Canadian society. However, nearly a decade into his leadership, Trudeau's approval ratings have taken a hit, and the reasons behind his declining popularity are as varied as they are complex. When Trudeau first came to power, he was seen as a breath of fresh air after nearly a decade of conservative rule under Stephen Harper. His promises of transparency, social justice, and environmental action captured the imagination of voters, especially younger Canadians and those aligned with progressive values. Trudeau's focus on gender equality, Indigenous rights, and climate change helped position him as a forward-thinking leader on the global stage. Yet, as his tenure has progressed, several factors have contributed to his decline in popularity. One of the key issues that have dogged Trudeau's leadership is his handling of the economy. While Canada has seen periods of economic growth under his leadership, there have also been significant challenges. For example, the federal deficit has ballooned, with the national debt reaching over $1.2 trillion last year. This has raised concerns about fiscal responsibility and the long-term sustainability of Trudeau's economic policies. Many Canadians worry about the burden of debt on future generations, particularly as the cost of living continues to rise. Under Trudeau's leadership, Canada has experienced notable economic changes that have both benefited and burdened different segments of the population. The unemployment rate has fluctuated, hitting record lows in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic due to government support programs, but also seeing spikes as those programs were phased out. The cost of living, particularly housing, has soared in major urban centers like Toronto and Vancouver. Housing affordability has become a significant issue, with the average home price in Canada surpassing $700,000 in 2023. This has led to frustration among young Canadians and middle-class families who feel increasingly priced out of the housing market. Another area where Trudeau has faced criticism is his approach to environmental policy. While he has championed initiatives such as carbon pricing and the Paris Agreement, his government's approval of controversial oil pipelines has led to accusations of hypocrisy. Environmentalists and Indigenous groups have been particularly vocal in their opposition to projects like the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, which they argue contradicts Trudeau's commitment to combating climate change. This tension between economic development and environmental protection has alienated some of Trudeau's supporters who feel that his actions have not lived up to his rhetoric. Trudeau's government has also faced scandals that have tarnished his image as a champion of ethics and transparency. The SNC Lavalin affair in 2019, where Trudeau was accused of pressuring the Attorney General to intervene in a criminal case against a major Quebec engineering firm, severely damaged his credibility. This scandal led to the resignation of key cabinet ministers and a significant drop in public trust. More recently, the WE Charity scandal in 2020, where Trudeau's government awarded a lucrative contract to a charity with close ties to his family, further eroded public confidence in his leadership. These controversies have fueled perceptions of cronyism and raised questions about Trudeau's integrity. Trudeau's handling of Indigenous issues has also been a source of controversy. While he has made significant commitments to reconciliation, including acknowledging the harms of residential schools and increasing funding for Indigenous communities, his government's actions have often fallen short of expectations. Many Indigenous leaders and activists have criticized Trudeau for failing to deliver on key promises, such as ensuring clean drinking water in all Indigenous communities and respecting Indigenous land rights. The ongoing disputes over resource extraction projects on Indigenous lands have further strained relations, leading to protests and legal battles that have highlighted the disconnect between Trudeau's words and deeds. The COVID-19 pandemic presented Trudeau with one of the most significant challenges of his leadership. While his government's response was initially praised for its swift action in rolling out financial support programs and securing vaccines, the pandemic's long-term effects have exposed weaknesses in Canada's healthcare system and economic resilience. The rollout of vaccines was criticized for delays, and the economic fallout from the pandemic has exacerbated existing inequalities. The pandemic has also fueled frustration with the federal government's handling of border controls, travel restrictions, and public health guidelines, with some Canadians feeling that the response was inconsistent and poorly communicated. On the international stage, Trudeau's reputation has also taken hits. While he continues to be a vocal advocate for liberal values, his government's foreign policy has been criticized for lacking coherence and effectiveness. Trudeau's handling of relations with China, for example, has been fraught with challenges, particularly following the arrest of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou and the subsequent detention of 2 Canadian citizens in China. The strained relationship with China has had economic repercussions, including trade disruptions that have impacted Canadian farmers and exporters. Additionally, Trudeau's commitment to increasing Canada's defense spending and involvement in international conflicts has been questioned, with critics arguing that his government has failed to meet its NATO obligations and assert Canada's role on the global stage. Perhaps one of the most significant factors contributing to Trudeau's unpopularity is the perception that he has failed to deliver on his promises of real change. While he has enacted several progressive policies, such as legalizing cannabis and implementing a national carbon tax, many Canadians feel that his government has not gone far enough in addressing key issues like income inequality, healthcare, and climate change. The growing sense of disillusionment with traditional political parties has led to a rise in support for both left and right-wing populist movements, with Trudeau's centrist approach increasingly seen as out of touch with the needs of ordinary Canadians. In conclusion, Justin Trudeau's decline in popularity can be attributed to a combination of economic challenges, environmental controversies, scandals, and unmet expectations. While he has achieved significant milestones during his time in office, the gap between his rhetoric and actions has led to growing disillusionment among many Canadians. As Trudeau continues to navigate the complexities of leading a diverse and evolving nation, his ability to regain the trust and support of the Canadian public remains uncertain. Whether he can reverse the tide of unpopularity will likely depend on his government's ability to address the pressing issues facing Canada in the years ahead.